Okay, old business. We have authorizing the county executive to execute a contract with Strand and Associates for a feasibility study, and they are with us this morning, and Sam's going to come up and get that going.
Make a motion to
Pardon?
remove that from the table. Second.
That was it. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. All righty.
Allows you to speak.
That was on.
Madam
Or it was, I see
Chairwoman,
it now.
thank you so much. Members of the committee, good morning. What a great day to be talking about solar. It's sunny and 70 degrees. I have here with me Andy Rundy from...
Are you talking about Monday?
Oh, it's going to be 70 degrees today, I promise. Thank you, Sam. I ordered it, and the sun started shining as I was coming over here. I made a call and I said, it's gonna, can we bump this up? We have a conversation that's kind of important today. Andy Rundy from Strand and Associates, who is the consulting agency that responded to the RFQ some time ago, as you may remember, to do a solar feasibility assessment on some of our county facilities to see where it may make sense and what it would entail to successfully implement solar on some of our property. And you all have the presentation in print in front of you. It looks like this. If that's more helpful to you, we also have it up here. So I'm going to have Andy go ahead. He's going to talk about his team and just some of their background, and then we'll go over some of the minutia of the agreement itself. I just want to state that it is in a draft form still, just because we have one more round of review we want to do to make sure we have it as best as possible. And you all will receive a digital copy of that hopefully on Monday by the end of the day. Okay, Andy, do you want to talk with us about your team here?
Sure. Thanks.
I got your back.
Thanks. First time, long time. Just wanted to thank you for the time and for considering Strand Associates. We are an experienced local team that will provide an efficient assessment of the comprehensive long-term strategy for Will County solar goals. And our longevity and leadership and commitment to the region is going to ensure that. We were founded in 1946, and we've been in Will County since 1987. We have a staff of 415 people nationwide, 40 in Joliet, soon to be 47. We've actually hired 7 new engineers that will be joining us this summer. We're employee-owned and managed. We're 188th of the top 500 firms in the U.S., and we are 19th in the Midwest. The team consists of several engineers. Darcy Gabrissa will be the client liaison. I will manage the project. And then we have a structural engineer, Tony Standish, and a electrical engineer, Brent Studniczka, who will provide quality control to make sure that all of our decisions have been properly vetted. And then we will also use experienced staff in solar, Michael David and Sean Bridwell, and additional staff as necessary. Our solar experience includes projects where we're working with agencies like Will County, other counties, for example, and other municipalities. We have 7 projects like that right now. 3 of those are in Illinois. We also have 18 projects where we worked with a public agency at 26 different sites, and 5 of those projects are in Illinois. We also do a lot of work in Wisconsin and Indiana, Ohio, and Iowa. And we also work with private installers, and we have 8 projects totaling 3 megawatts of power with those private installers. So we have a unique perspective to give to Will County. I'll go over a few of our projects. Our diverse experience with public agencies and solar installers brings the county a unique perspective. Some of our projects have been at jails, at schools, and municipal buildings such as city halls. The jail project that I'm going to bring up, there's a photo there, is a 200 kilowatt installation at a jail. You can see that some of the panels are mounted on the ground. Some of the panels are mounted on the side wall of the building. And we used different size modules and different size inverters, so we're very versatile in the way that we can do these designs. The next project shows modules on a roof, and so we're very well versed in roof projects as well. The following project is also a roof-mounted project in Galena, Illinois, where we did a design for them for their city hall. We also, at Galena, which is not pictured, did a wastewater treatment plant solar installation, which was, at the time, was the largest in the state of Illinois, but it's been usurped since then. For the 7 projects that Sam and her group have settled on, which she'll bring up later, for those 7 projects, we'll look at each one individually. And the key areas of study would be the installation options for those sites, whether it could be ground-mounted panels or roof-mounted panels or wall-mounted panels, probably not. Whether they've got good exposure to the sun, whether there are issues with shading from other buildings or shading from trees, whether they're graded to the south, several other aspects. The readiness of the building from a structural perspective, does it have a new roof? Does it need a new roof? Will the roof support the extra weight of solar? The electrical readiness, is the existing electrical code compliant? Does it have any capacity to add solar? And will ComEd be able to allow connection without extensive costs on their end? And the comprehensive financial evaluation for each site is going to be obviously key. From that evaluation for each site, we will rank the sites to determine which ones are best equipped to handle solar and which ones will have the best paybacks. And the variables there are economy of scale. Larger systems only cost about $1.50 per watt to install, whereas smaller systems cost up to $4 per watt. Obviously, the site readiness that we talked about, if we have to beef up the solar or the structural to handle the solar on the roof, there'll be some cost there. The equipment selection is we could have some higher upfront costs, but with those higher upfront costs might produce more energy, so we would factor that in. Any opportunity costs, what else could you do with that money, or what else could you do with that space? Whether we get the proper whether we get any funding for the project, and there definitely will be some funding available. It's a question of how much, through whether we go through purchase power agreements so that we can take advantage of federal tax credits, or whether we use grants that are available through ComEd or grants that are available through the state of Illinois, or renewable energy credits. So the annual revenue is going to obviously have an impact, and the annual maintenance cost. So we'll factor all of that into the evaluation. And I'll turn it back over to Sam so she can talk about which sites we're going to look at first.
Thank you, Andy. And I just want to note that this is not a special effect that we built into the PowerPoint. It just happens to look like sunshine. So I wanted to point out what facilities in review we were recommending to overview. Again, this is an evaluation process. If any of the sites that are evaluated appear attractive to the county board, then you all can provide us any directive on installation. There's no installation happening with this project. It's strictly to evaluate so that we can be strategic should it be the decision of you all to move forward a project for installation. So the facilities we're looking at are listed here. There's 7 of them. We have more facilities that we could evaluate, but in being responsible with the budget that we have allocated for this project, I feel that these are going to yield the most fruitful potential for solar. Some of our facilities, for example, we originally had our court annex, the EMCO facility on this list. Well, our new courthouse is going to provide some shade for that facility. So things that have happened, we started, I think, with 13.
Correct.
And poor Andy has watched me whittle the list down just to make sure that we're really focused on what has the most potential right now. And based on feedback from you all, we have that adult detention facility at the top, so we can see if solar is going to be an attractive option, how that could be combined with a roof replacement to be intentional about that. So those are the facilities we're looking at to start. Our agreement does stipulate that we can remove or add buildings as we go forward. And after each facility is evaluated, what will you see? We will come to the executive committee and we will present what has been found from that evaluation. And then as each additional property is done, evaluated, it will be added into the list and ranked accordingly. This is the timeline that we're proposing, assuming that the county board approves the agreement. And so really, we would start with the kickoff meeting and then we jump right into the ADF. We want to do everything we can to expedite that process so you all have all the information you need when looking at the roof replacement, either way, whether it looks like it's going to be beneficial or not. And then it goes forward. You can see it's really just building after building, evaluating, coming after each evaluation, sharing the new ranking table and the results with the executive committee, and then we will have a final strategic solar feasibility study, something that the county board had requested of us to say, how can we be intentional and strategic? Well, we will have that document by the end of this year. We project a November 21st deadline, and that would be, I believe we have it on there, the final board meeting that we would present the whole result for you all. Compensation, the question that everyone is wondering. We currently have a total fee estimate of $70,327. We budgeted $80,000 in our fiscal year 2019 budget out of the capital equipment replacement fund. That's where our gas to energy funding goes, the rebate money that we get, all of that goes into that account. We budgeted $80,000. We have a not to exceed explicitly stated in the agreement at $90,000. So Sam, why did you put that at $10,000 above the budgeted? In case we come across something where this county board wants us to pursue something that becomes apparent that we need that extra money, given that $10,000 may not be enough of a buffer, I wanted to include that so that you all have flexibility without having to go through another agreement process for the same type of work. But this agreement, this particular evaluation process will not exceed $90,000. And then any services that do go beyond that $70,327 have to be improved in writing, and we will bring for your consideration so that you all are kept abreast of the most current cost figures for this project. The deliverables, what are the outcomes? This is really exciting to see that we will have this. We'll have an understanding of what the structural integrity of the building is as relates specifically to solar. We'll understand what it would take to bring us to a place where we could install solar, as Andy had said before. Technical, we'll look at how is the property positioned, is it attractive to take in photons to actually produce energy. Economic, how is it going to benefit our taxpayers by reducing operational costs? Environmental, what does the installation of solar, even the consideration, the evaluation of solar energy say about our care for our surrounding community and the environment? And then strategic, how can we use this evaluation to implement with long-term planning so that we know that we have an objective, fully vetted, third-party evaluation going forward as we continue to discuss this hot topic. I wanted to make that brief. So if you have any questions or comments, Andy and I are happy to address those. Go ahead.
I have questions about the overall evaluation, and I'm going to specifically talk about the decommissioning and the life of the system, and whether we put that into the overall cost. And I probably more specifically looking at rooftop, the removal, what would be those costs? Because there's going to be costs at the end of the life, and we should know what that is. Or in the case of a roof needs to be replaced sooner than we may have expected, or if a roof is older, and say, well, you're probably going to have to replace the roof in 10 years, that may not be a good candidate. But I do think the end-of-life cost, whether it be a roof or whether it be on the ground or whatever, is something certainly that we should take a look at, because it will be a cost. So in your current overall valuation, is that considered?
Yes.
It is. Okay. And when you show an overall valuation, you would show that as a separate itemized item of cost at end of life.
Yes.
So that would be a part of the review. You'd
Okay.
say, this building was considered, but this is outstanding in terms of the roof or whatever, and so we put it further down or further up on the list because of that. Would be a
Yes,
part
and
of it.
the
Okay.
cost of removal will also be part of it, and I should really mention everything you have in front of you. You have a copy of the presentation we're going through now. You have a copy of the agreement, again, it says draft because we have that one last, we want it to say this instead of that sort of review process. And then you have an attachment, it says attachment A. This is a redacted copy of what a deliverable for a facility could look like. So if you looked through and said, oh, okay, well, I see that we're talking financially, we're going to talk about what it would cost to remove and how that rolls into the total ROI.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for the question.
Other questions? Okay, I need a motion?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
Discussion?
Yeah, I do have one question. How much, I mean, I guess you'll find this out when you pick the final buildings, what the potential cost versus the revenue is going to be? I mean,
Yes.
that'll be a part of it. I recently had a solar person out to my house to kind of do they do it on a computer somewhere. They got an engineer somewhere, and they just wait for the result to come back. So it tells them, like, how many watts and how big the system can be on my house. Do we have limits on what we're trying to do? Because there were limits for residential. Like, I couldn't have a system that was over 10.5 kilowatts. And so because of the limits, it really wasn't going to save me any money, just based on our electric usage in our particular situation. So are there limits on what we can put on our buildings, and is that going to make our savings lower? I guess that's my question.
So there may be limits relative to the funding that might be available, or not necessarily limits, but funding might be reduced if the system is not in the proper size. For example, the Illinois Solar Renewable Energy Credit amounts, the dollar amounts per megawatt produced, go down the bigger the system. So a smaller system has a better chance of better payback, I guess, from that perspective. But that's to offset the fact that it's cheaper to install larger systems. So there are some limits, but there won't be a specific limit to say you can't go beyond that. It would just be a question of, if we go beyond that, then how does that change the return on investment?
Well, that's right.
Yes, and space is a possible limitation.
Okay.
As well as, depending on what is already feeding into the nearest substation to the project, what that would be feeding in, ComEd may have limitations and say, we're sorry, at this time, we just simply don't have the capacity without you making upgrades X, Y, and Z, and we estimate those costs to be $700,000.
Yeah, and I
or
read
whatever
about
it may
that
be.
too. So all of that will be factored into making the decision about which buildings that we do this on, so that we do end up on the right side of the ledger.
Andy will tell you, I haven't allowed him to leave any stone unturned. We're going to be as comprehensive as possible. That's the point of us offering this project for your all's consideration, because we want to be as comprehensive as we can in one evaluation, so that when we are making those decisions, we have all that information. We don't get caught up in the minutia of, okay, do we hire and do it on a project-by-project basis? This will give both an isolated viewpoint on each facility for all of the points that have been brought up, as well as the big picture strategically.
Right, and I just also wanted to point out that we don't have any real skin in the game. Strand doesn't. So while I would love to see solar promoted, at the same time, there's we're going to give you the answer that is the right answer for you. There's no real benefit to us if we tell you
Thank you.
not to put solar on.
Yeah, because I mean, obviously, when you're dealing with an outside vendor and it's a residential, there's a reason they're coming to my house.
Yes.
And they have skin in the game, and they are trying to get something out of it. And I guess that is why there are all these limitations and stuff, which are far different than what we're doing. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I do have another question. As part of your overall analysis, as we talk about return on investment, and we know right now, it's not that good. I mean, we might not see a return on investment for 15 years, not till the end of the life of the system, almost. Which brings the strategy of how do you phase it in? As these technologies become more cost efficient, I mean, is those type of considerations, like, well, you don't want to do it all today. You want to maybe phase this in over a 10-year period. Certainly I think the county has kind of made a decision that, we're just going to do our bit for renewables, lower the carbon footprint, and that there's not really going to be a return on investment initially. But there can be a strategy how you phase technologies in to better that return on investment. Kind of like cost averaging into the stock market, right?
Right.
So do you do those type of analyses that may suggest how you would phase in more from an economic model than an energy model?
So what we'll do is, as part of the analysis, first of all, a lot of the equipment that's available now has they figured that out over the last 20 years. So the systems are very modular. So as there are improvements in technology, you take this piece off the wall and you put this piece on. You take this module off the roof and you put this one on. This module sizes are basically set, and there's 2 different module sizes, and that's it. So as they build new modules that are more, that's the device on the roof that collects the sun, the module, the PV module. As they develop new technology, they're still going to make it the exact same size. It's going to fit right back on the same racking. So that's all standardized now, which will help that. The modules themselves now are pretty much expected to produce very well for 40 years. They have a 25-year guarantee. The inverters themselves, which is the other component, also it doesn't have any moving parts. That piece of equipment can be purchased with a 25-year guarantee if you want. You pay a little bit more for that, but they traditionally last 15 to 20 years, and then you replace them. Right now, they're about 10% of the cost of the project, so you'd be add 10% in 15 years later, and you can reuse the 40-year roof equipment on the roof. And then that 40 years also kind of coincides with the best roof technologies out there.
We don't have 40-year roofs, though. That's the problem. Just to follow up a little bit, I understand what you're saying, but you anticipate that the cost is kind of steadily come down.
It is.
And that's probably what I'm talking about, a strategy, bringing, the cost of the technology today maybe 40% less 10 years from now. I mean, is there some kind of modeling that maybe can predict?
There's definitely modeling to predict what's going to happen. Price will not drop as significantly as it has in the last 5 years. We've seen it decrease about 70%, so it's really reached its efficiency. Yes, and depending on tariffs and things of that nature, we may see it fluctuate a little bit. I don't think it's anything that's going to be too significant within the timeline that we'd be looking at with this evaluation. But what we can do in the evaluation, to your point, is we can look at it as an isolated incident for each site. So if we can decide whichever one, if we want to do it tomorrow, we have the most current information. But then when we put that ranking table together and say this is the order in which we recommend the prioritization of the projects, we can build in those different components, those uncertainties, so that we have a buffer so that it remains an accurate plan for solar adoption.
Other questions? We have a motion and a table. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You gotta turn your mic back.
I forgot, we had too many on for a while there. Yeah, start all over. Okay, so the new business then, we'll start with the presentation on benefits management options. Nick, I think you're up.
Good morning, everyone. I'm going to give a very brief introduction and then let our guests speak, but
Thank you.
unwrap your Christmas presents first, and then, so quick introduction. As Mr. Mustis knows, I know, and Denise knows now, as leader of the board and in the county executive's office, we get approached by a lot of vendors. Some of them, we actually take the meetings and see what they're selling as far as a product.
Secrets.
And sometimes they're good enough that we bring them to the board, and I hope you consider them. So this is one of those cases. This company has met with during the previous 2 years, met with the board leadership then. We didn't make it to the board just because of the election and just timing. They've met with the current county board leadership, and we believe this is something worth taking a look at. Over the years, we've discussed long-term benefit liabilities and the accumulation of sick time, comp time, et cetera, and it's a liability that sometimes we see employees accumulate in today's dollars, but then get paid out in future dollars, and that's something we're conscious of, we want to manage. So we've been exploring ways how we might address that. So today isn't about action, this is just about education, but the Illinois Public Pension Fund Association is here. Joel Babbitt, right, and Kevin O'Brien are here, along with Terry O'Brien in the audience. They're going to give you a presentation, then once they're done, I may have a few suggestions on how we want to proceed, or they may have some suggestions, so I'll turn it over to them. So, you got to hit the star to turn your mic.
Good morning. Madam, thank you very much for the opportunity. What we'd like to do is, my name is Joel Babbitt, my colleague Kevin, and Terry's sitting back there. There's a brochure inside the packet. It's this little one. Should be on the left-hand side if we did them all the same. Basically, a lot of the local units of government are all struggling with a lot of the same issues, and that is an accumulation of a lot of sick and vacation time that get paid out at the end of your employees' careers. And since 2004, we've been very active in coming up with solutions to start reducing that liability. And so what I'd like to do is sort of overview what we've done already with a whole bunch of communities already in Will County. The city of Naperville has it, Manuka Fire has it, Plainfield has it, and there's many more that have already implemented this solution to start driving down their GASB 45 issue. So what this program does is it allows the employees to take current forms of compensation, including accumulated sick and vacation days, and put that money aside triple tax-free. And this is nothing new. These plans go back to 1928. There's about 17,000 of them out there. So again, it's nothing new. Maybe it's new to you, but since 1995, these have been pretty rampant on the governmental side. So the money goes in tax-free. That's pre-Medicare and pre-Social Security. So for you as the employer, it saves you the Medicare and Social Security match, just like a flexible spending account. The money that goes into this account goes into an individual account like a 401k that the participant self-directs. Once they separate service, they have a pot of money. And we know that Illinois Constitution guarantees them the right to stay on the health insurance plan at Will County here, or whether they go get their own insurance, it doesn't really matter. But what happens is once they separate service, they have a pot of money that they can now reimburse themselves for qualified medical expenses, including premiums, all tax-free. So the money goes in tax-free, it grows tax-free, and it comes out tax-free. We happen to be in the vendors that we work with or compete with. We're all third-party administrators, so what happens is you set up this with a vendor, you outsource the running and the administration of the plan to that vendor, and once somebody separates service, the employee frankly doesn't really interact anymore with Will County. They're interacting with the third-party administrator. And typically what happens is that if the employee's covered by IMRF is going to withhold the premium, remit it to the county on their behalf. We're reimbursing the participant for their share of the premium, plus any co-pays, deductibles, co-insurance for dental, vision, chiropractic, any qualified expenses, and your third-party administrator will make sure that those are qualified expenses. So the money goes in tax-free, and what we've been arguing is that, and even on the labor side, we're making the argument that we don't understand why as an employee, you're accumulating these really large banks. And I'd argue that on the employer side, why are the employees being able to accumulate these large banks? You need to structure an incentive or structure a program that allows them to take that money and put it away tax-free. And the beauty is that you're paying it out in today's wage rate. So we have many local units of government that have adopted programs that once you get to some threshold, we'll call it, let's say it's 4 months of sick time in the bank, whatever it may happen to be, and any form of compensation can go into this plan. But once they hit a threshold, if they finish the year above that, everything mandatorily rolls into the plan. They don't have a choice. It's just structurally how it has to work. And it rolls in tax-free. The advantage for you is that you're paying it out in today's wage rate. You're also paying it out before Medicare and Social Security, so you save all the associated payroll taxes. So you've now eliminated that liability off your book. And we're arguing to the employees, if pay raises average 2.5% over a career, maybe it's 3% if it's generous, but that 2.5% to 3% is taxable. Why are you lending your money to your employer, earning 2.5% to 3% taxable, when you can cap it, get it paid out tax-free, have it go into an investment account completely tax-free? And our fixed account, for example, is paying 2.2. It's about wage inflation. If you stick the money into just a simple S&P 500 fund, then we know that that fund over the last 90 years has averaged close to 10%. So whatever the portfolio does, it does. But even if it averages 6.5% or 7%, that's 6.5 or 7 completely tax-free, and you've now gotten that liability off the books. So on page 2, we talk about what are the sources of income that can go into it, and our experience has been is that these plans have grown as time has gone on. So when we started doing these plans back in 2004, it was somebody would get paid out all their sick time at their end of their career. So, Nick, what would be like a typical check somebody would be getting, like your sheriffs, or a lot of money?
But there's been a few, we'll just say there's been a few large ones for some department head types.
Yeah, so let's say a check is paid out for $50,000 to that participant. By the time they pay federal and state taxes, they may have netted about $35,000. Maybe. So what happens in this is that they get paid out the 50, all 50,000 goes into it. So the 15,000 that you would have paid on taxes as a participant, how many months of health care would that have bought you? Maybe it's 10, maybe it's 20, who knows? But better you than Uncle Sam. And you, in the process, have saved all the payroll taxes. So sick time, vacation time, a percentage of pay, any form of compensation. We just had a police union put in their uniform allowance. Any unused uniform allowance mandatorily goes in. So there's creative ways to structure money into this plan. For the bargaining units, it has to be negotiated into their contract. So it's got to be in their contract. It could be a side letter. It could be memorandum of understanding, whatever the right terminology is. For the non-represented, what we've done is, and a perfect example of that would be Buffalo Grove Park District. Buffalo Grove Park District, what they did, it's about 130 employees, all non-union. Over the course of about 8 to 12 months of education, we educated all their employees about what the advantages of this plan are. And so they implemented the plan, and the membership, the employees, decided that they were tying contribution into length of service covered by a pension. So 0 to 5 years was 1% of pay. 6 to 10 was 2. 11 to 15 was 3. So you get the idea. And so what happens is as of September 12th of 2014, the IRS has issued some additional regulations that basically states that upon implementation of the plan, current employees of that class, so in Buffalo Grove Park District, it was everybody, and the executive director was basically implementing this and saying, hey, we're going to put in this plan. You guys have agreed upon a contribution rate, which was a percentage of pay plus your sick and vacation time when you separate service. When you start up a plan, you need to offer a one-time lifetime opt-out. And so for someone that didn't want anything to do with it, they opted out. It was an irrevocable decision. They could never get back in. All future employees are mandatorily covered. And so it was a great way to start getting, for the Buffalo Grove Park District, who they have employees that accumulate these big banks. And frankly, one of the reasons why we see people not retiring today is healthcare costs. So it's a way for them to start putting money aside to cover healthcare costs. So some of the questions that come up is who can use this money? So once you separate service, the trigger to get to your money is separation of service regardless of age. So it doesn't matter how old you are, once you separate service. That money could be used on yourself and any tax dependent. Spouse, children, partner, anybody is a tax dependent. Nieces and nephews, no. If mommy's in a nursing home and she's your tax dependent and you've qualified for the benefit, you can use that money on her nursing home cares, on her care. And again, the money can be used for co-pays, deductibles, coinsurance, dental, vision, chiropractic. It's basically a flexible spending account, if you know what that is. It's an FSA for retirement that can be used on premium. The bulk of our claims, we manage about 80 of these plans, and the bulk of our participants, they're using the money for premium only. But they could submit receipts for co-pays, deductibles again, and all the years we've been doing this, we've denied 3 claims. Prednisone on a dog. Good try, a dog's not a tax dependent. A hot tub without a doctor's note wasn't medically necessary, and the other was another medically unnecessary procedure. And so with that being the case, our experience is that people have a finite amount of money in these accounts and they're pretty frugal on how they part with it. And they're very careful on it. Does it cost Will County anything to do this? We provide all the documents for a one-time fee of $350. That's it. Okay, so there's basically no cost to the county to implement the plan. You save all the payroll taxes. And what happens is that you pass the plan at the board level where you adopt all the documents. And then as groups come on, they're added via resolution as an additional class on the plan. So class 1 could be all non-represented. Class 2 could be sheriff's, local, whatever. Class 3 could be the next bargaining unit. And it tends to come on group by group. And what our experience has been is that these plans will be modified as time goes on, as the members of the specific groups become more comfortable with this plan and how money goes into it. Some of the other questions that come up, there's 2 plan documents you can use. You can use what's known as a 501c9 trust. Those are what's known as VEBAs, V-E-B-A. You can also use a 115 trust. The 115 trust has a significant advantage. That advantage occurs only under one set of circumstances. If a member dies without a tax dependent. So a participant, whether it's a 501c9 or a 115 trust, a member dies. The account is retitled in their spouse's name. So we had a fireman in Lockport Fire, 37 years old, passed away. Was sick and passed away. The money got retitled in his spouse's name. The spouse then got to use that money for her COBRA, whatever she wanted to use it for, as if he was alive and retired. That make sense? The problem with the 501c9 trust is if you die without a tax dependent. If you die without a tax dependent, the money's gone. It reverts back to the plan and gets redistributed among the active members of that group. Okay? With a 115 trust, the money reverts back to Will County, and Will County contractually will issue a check to their named beneficiary. You just have to issue a 1099. And your vendor would provide that as a service to you. That's something that we do that on behalf of the city of Aurora, on behalf of the city of Naperville. So, but basically, you have a GASB issue. You have this issue of employees with large accumulated banks, and it's really been a thought of what are the solutions out there. And so these solutions have been around pretty significantly on the governmental side since 1995. We've been doing them since 2004. We've got, again, about 80 of these plans, and so there's a pretty simple solution. It's an education effort on behalf of getting the participants in the different groups educated on what's available to them and extolling the reasons why they need to be putting money away for health care. And we all know that if you don't die before retirement, you're going to retire. And you have to pay for health care. It's not free, even Medicare. You might as well pay for it tax-free. And that's what these plans do. So, Nick, did I miss anything?
Yeah. Jim?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I think it's a benefit, these type of plans and planning for your retirement. I think these types of programs are good programs to have. For us, reducing our liability, I'm not so sure that would happen. and I'll explain why. What do we allow, 200 days of sick time? It keeps changing. Whatever we allow, 220 days of sick time. If they retire, it's paid out at half. It's not paid out at full cost. So here's what I envision a little bit here, and why it may not address our liability issue. Doesn't mean it's not a good program to go forward. But I think everyone should understand, it may not eliminate one bit of liability, because what will happen is you're capped, right? I forget exactly the number, but our employees can accumulate 200 days of sick time, which they'll get paid out half. So now they hit their max. Well, they'll just now continue it. They'll keep their max, and they'll just take their new sick time and roll it into this program. So, it's costing us to put in the program, and we're not reducing our liability. Now, they may cash it out at some time. Of course, we would have to then make a decision, even if they're cashing it out, if we let them cash it out at full cost or full day. There would be another decision for the board. So, although I think the program can be very beneficial, and I think we should very often give opportunities for our employees to really plan an effective way, not only for their day-to-day costs, but their medical costs going forward. I'm not so sure that it reduces our liability, will reduce our liability. It's been my experience, our employees kind of figure out, as all employees, not just ours, they'll figure out what's most beneficial to them. So, as they should. So I'm not, I think there's a good possibility that it would not reduce our liability. One, they'll take the max, they'll just roll the new days into the plan, which we would have to pay, and we still just pay out at 50% at the end, not a full. So
let me rebut you a little bit.
Sure.
What our experience has been a little different. When somebody's at the max, what's happening is that they're calling in sick. So they're burning the sick day, and you've got to pay someone time and a half to cover that shift. So what our experience has been is that as part of the process of education, the 220 no longer stays, or the 200 no longer stays. Someone's going to end up going, why in the world do I have these 200 days? Let's knock it down to 100.
Well, if we could do that, that would be great.
Correct. So our experience has just been a little different. You could be absolutely right at the end of the day.
Well, I think initially what an employee, at least I'll be an employee, what I would do initially saying, well, how many days do I think I need to put aside? If you're older, you say, I could have an event happen and I'll be out of work for 3 months. I'm going to save 3 months worth of sick time, say. If you're younger, you say, I don't need more than, accumulate more than 30 days for illness purposes, right? So I think each employee does his own, will do his own analysis and can figure out what's best for them. They just call off because they have excess time, and it automatically costs us time and a half. That's not necessarily the case, but it could be though in certain instances. But I'm just saying that to this committee and it may not reduce the liability as much as you think, but I think it is a good programs to offer the employees. That's all.
Other questions, Jackie?
Yeah. My question had to do with our GASB rating. Can we use this to offset our GASB rating? Does it actually lower the rating, or the liability? That was my first, because we are putting money into this account. Does it really reduce what our debt is? Does that happen? And then, this all just sounds too good that the government's not getting any of their money, and I'm just waiting for the government to figure out that people are doing this and at higher numbers, and then all of a sudden, we're not going to get out of paying the tax. We're going to have to pay the tax. So that's kind of my thought process, but it does sound like a good program. I just, Just was kind of curious how, you said, how long have you guys been doing this?
Say that once again, ma'am, I'm sorry.
How long have you been doing this?
Well, we've been doing this since 2004, but the plans have been in existence since 1928.
So this has been legal since
Oh, yeah.
1928. That's just interesting. I've never, ever heard of it before, so.
So what our experience has been is, let's walk through some of the unions.
Yeah.
So, Oak Forest Fire, they had an unlimited sick day bank. The union went in and capped it at 318 hours. So that immediately wiped out the liability above 318. Because they said, okay, our guys are walking out the door with whatever they have, we're going to cap it at 318. You're going to pay us out today. When we settle the contract for everybody above 318, it goes into their own individual account. And if you finish the year above 318, it mandatorily rolls in. And so that helped Oak Forest drive down a mammoth liability into something more manageable. And so what you're talking about is also is, like we were at Downers Grove yesterday. The Village of Downers Grove, or Orland Fire. Orland Fire has a significant OPEB liability. They actually put all the money aside already into a trust to eliminate that, to remove it off their books. But they've also been, many bargaining units or entities have been very proactive in working with the unions, and the unions are the one that's been primarily driving it. And the unions are going in, going, why are we accumulating all these big sick day banks? And especially if we're only getting paid 50 cents on the dollar on it, that let's start driving that cap down to a number that we can all live with, whether it's the 90 days or 30 days or the 318, whatever it may happen to be. So Naperville Police and Fire, they've gone in and they've capped their sick day bank. They put in 40 hours of sick time annually.
Yeah, I do.
Then they cap their sick day bank at 960 hours. And so if they accumulate more than 960, it rolls in, and then they get paid out dollar for dollar up to the 960 when they walk out the door. So the unions have been driving it, looking to drive down their sick day accumulation because they think the money's better off already in their hands, sitting in an investment account that's going to grow much faster than their wages.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, and I think you mentioned this during your presentation, but I'm going to get clarification. So, let's say, and of course, like I say, we would have to have a policy whether we're going to pay them 100% or 50% or
Whatever it is.
75%. So let's say, Jackie's a 40-year employee, she's at the max, she is 6 months from retirement. Can she roll over 100% of those sick days over just before she retires?
So,
I'm just wondering.
yeah, there's no...
I'm just wondering, is there any limit, and I think you said something during your presentation.
Yeah, there's...
Is there any limit on what you can move at any one particular time, or is that up to us?
It's a triggering event. So the triggering event would be for the bargaining unit or for non-represented, that X happens, they separate service. Anything that's accumulated in their sick and vacation account by formula, whether it's all of it at 50%, whether it's half of it at 50%, whatever it is, an employee cannot have a decision to do something. There's no discretion, so it's a set of rules that you have to follow. So like Buffalo Grove Park District, their contribution out of every pay period was predicated upon how long they've been employed under a pension. And there is no annual or lifetime maximum amount of money that can go into these plans.
Okay.
Let me see that a little bit different.
Yeah.
But do they get to say when it would go into the plan?
Yeah.
It's-
That's
yes,
what you-
yes.
Yeah, so-
what I'm getting at.
I guess,
Not waiting to
well, it's,
then say, "Ooh, let me switch over because next year I'm gonna."
it's, they're not just saying, I want to roll 100 hours over. I mean, it's triggered by the plan.
Right.
We're going to have to do some work on our end to say what legally are we required to do and what are we choosing to do as far as the max on this. I mean, if we lower the max, and we legally can do that, and I don't want to speak to that level of detail.
IRS regulation.
Right, right.
You can only put so much in any one particular year.
But not for this program.
A little bit different.
Yeah, that was my other question. Like with an IRA, you can only put in, 65%.
So there are no annual limits or lifetime limits. So it's not like a 401k, it's not like a 457, it's not like a flexible spending account where you're limited to $2,000 or $2,500. There are no limits. The largest of these plans is the GM Ford Chrysler with UAW, and there was about $6 billion that was deposited into that plan when it got initiated. So there is no limit to what goes in. The bulk of our plans when we started were all end-of-career payout. It mandated that everything at the end of your career had to go into it. Those were sizable checks that went in.
You can put additional contributions in?
So any form of compensation can go into it. So our experience has been, is that the plan started as end of career only. So Oak Forest Fire, it was that sick days, up to 318. What happens is that some of their members never get to 318 because they burn every sick day. There are other members that go, I'm never going to have enough money to retire even though I'm a really good saver. So I want to be putting in a percentage of the pay. So then the bargaining unit decided that everyone was doing 1.5% of pay, in addition to the 318. So any form of compensation, I mean, Kankakee Police was just looking at doing the uniform allowance as an example.
Denise, one more question about that. So you say any form of pay. Let's say I decide to put 25% of my paycheck into this. Does that eliminate the county from having to pay payroll taxes and social security taxes?
So you as an individual cannot make a decision to do anything.
The whole group has to decide. So let's say we do the 1% and we do this countywide. So that 1% of salary, we no longer have to pay social.
Correct.
We could oppose it, say?
Yes.
So it could be a kind of a forced savings plan,
Correct.
if you will.
It's no different than, sorry, Nick.
That's right.
When an employee voluntarily defers money, puts money into a flexible spending account, do you offer an FSA? Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. When they put money into a flexible spending account, you as the employer save the Medicare and Social Security tax there too. It's no different.
So it works the same, like, I mean, in theory, like you all of a sudden start a 401K program, and like you said at the beginning, you get the opportunity to opt in or opt out, and in a 401K, you're putting money aside, and the employer, usually has a match or whatever, and it's mandated across the board. If you participate, whatever that level is, okay.
Denise?
Gloria? Yeah.
Is about annual fees. So inside the kit, on the left-hand side are a portfolio of investments. It's just like a 457 deferred comp plan. Our fees range from 0 to 1.53 on the investments. We get a piece of that investment fee. That's how we get paid.
And who's paying that, us or the employee?
The individual participant, just like with deferred comp.
The one issue I just want to point out, one of the reasons why we thought this was worth taking a look at is on page 2, it's not just sick time, it's vacation time and comp time. And I think this is kind of to Mr. Moustis's point, is we don't know the total savings, but because it's not across the board. There are many employees who every sick day they get, they use, every vacation day they use. Our contractual employees, and I believe I'm correct on this, are required by contract to use it or lose it. Our non-union people are not, it's encouraged to use it, but we don't necessarily, at least in the executive branch, you don't lose it immediately because some of our employees just can't take the time, and they've accumulated a larger than their annual number. I just looked at mine today, and I've got a bunch, and we encourage people to take the time to use it for benefits just of your mental health and whatnot, but there are some that they just can't do it. So what we've done, and I know different offices have done this, they've paid out some of that vacation time just to spend it down. I mean, this could be, in those cases, this could be a mechanism to spend it down in today's dollars versus, if I was allowed to, and I'm really not, but if I accumulated 500 hours of vacation time and then at the end of my time here, I'm paid a higher salary than I started, it'd be a pretty good program for me, but we don't don't want to do that. We want to pay out in current dollars and try to manage that money so that the employee isn't losing, I don't think, of this. That's why Joel said a lot of the unions have embraced this, because you're not really losing. You're just getting it up front, and you're getting a little more control over it as an employee. So there's an education piece to this, but I just wanted to point that out because it's more than just the sick. For a lot of, that's probably impact more people, but the comp and the vacation time will impact certain groups more so, and a lot of those are represented, so we would have to do that through a negotiation process. But as kind of maybe moving towards next steps and wrapping up, is we wanted to bring this to you to chew on a little, think about, do your own research. I don't know if there's some type of working group, we want to look at this a little deeper, but also if we were going to implement this, and we came up with all the details we need, we could implement this for our non-union people earlier and kind of pilot it, if you will, and then work through the contract negotiation process for the future. But we just thought it was worth, there's a lot of questions probably just because it does seem a little unique, but it's worth taking a look. I don't know if you guys have any closing comments, but...
So I think on the top, it seems like a good program to look into further. I mean, for me, I would like to know what the numbers are today, how many sick days, comp time, things like that, because the restriction here, of course, is you can only use this money for your health care. So our younger people, I would think, I know you can force them after a certain point to put in, but if you're only using this for health care costs, I wonder, how do the employees at some of these other unions, how did they feel about putting this towards only healthcare costs? Because if you have vacation time, comp time, me personally, I'd rather have my money up front and take a vacation than put it in there, and then my sick pay maybe go into the healthcare thing. So I'm just wondering, how do the employees feel? And before we go further, we need so much more information.
So what our experience has been is that you have someone retiring, let's say they're 60 years old, they're 55 years old. If healthcare is going to run them and their spouse $1,500 a month, that's after tax, $1,500 a month. And then let's say they're fortunate that they and their spouse live to age 65. Fidelity Investments does a study every year that talks about how much money you and your spouse need to subsidize Medicare. And so Fidelity, a third party, not us, their number is you need about $300,000. The male is 65, going to live to 83. The female 65, going to live to 85. That $300,000 does not even include long-term care needs. And so what our experience has been is that 40% of a person's pension check has gone between health care and taxes. That's devastating. And then once you get to Medicare, most people think, hey, it's free. It's not. It's the furthest thing from it. And so, and remember, every bucket is independent, whether somebody may add vacation time later on down the road as a group. So the plans start simply and then tend to expand as time goes on, as people become more comfortable with it.
So you don't have to do all or nothing at all.
Bingo. Thank you.
Can I say one more thing?
So there's some options, yes.
So I'm thinking then it's a definite benefit, because having had people who've had to go into a nursing home, some people are faced with their spouse going to a nursing home and he's getting a retirement amount, pension paid or whatever, and then the other spouse is looking at, well, because he has so much money, now they have to pay the nursing home versus going on Medicare, and this would give them a big right. So this would be a benefit where the people could live longer in their home and everything without changing anything in their financial world until that account would be drawn down all the way. So that could be a definite benefit to them.
Correct.
Yep, okay.
Questions?
Denise, but maybe a suggestion. I think that maybe putting employee groups together, the non-union, put a group together perhaps, and talk to some of the union representation. Let's get some feedback from them, and then maybe come back. What do you think?
I like that. Anything else?
Then they can kick it around.
I would agree. I'll make a motion to.
You have a comment here?
Yeah, I just wondered what unions have bought into this.
Program? Pretty much them all.
All?
FOP, MAP,
Okay.
Fire, SEIU, AFSMI.
That's a list.
So those are a list of our clients, Teamsters. So if you want, sir, I'm happy to provide you a list of the unions. Tell me, what unions do you have?
MAP, FOP.
So AFSMI, MAP, FOP, they've all implemented plans, and we're typically already being brought into negotiations by all the different locals.
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion that we start an employee, non-union feedback group, exploration group.
And we can include the unions, too.
That's
I mean, at
fine.
this point, because
Yeah.
they're not going to, if we wouldn't implement it as quickly with them, but I think we might as well include them in the group.
Maybe
because
include the leaders or
I
something?
think there's
or-
been some informal discussion.
Yeah, yeah, that's good. Yeah, an ad hoc committee to look at the plan.
Question?
Can the other board members receive a copy of?
Thank you. In case you didn't hear that, was that all board members get a copy of the packet. We can make sure that it happens. We will put out a notice asking for people to be a part of the ad hoc committee, and then make sure that every board member gets a copy of this packet so that we can have some further discussions. Okay? So I don't believe we got an answer on the motion. We had a motion and a second.
Did we have a second?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yes. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Have a great
Thanks again, good to see you again. Okay. Jason, you can come on up, you're next. Some of you had asked for an overview about the demolition or whatever, not demolition, but what the possibilities were for the old courthouse. And I asked Jason to give a brief overview of that so that people understand what the possibilities were there.
Good morning, everyone. Jason Dwyer with White & Company. Yeah, I think there's been a lot of discussion, actually a lot of discussion capital on and off over the past couple years, I'd say, about future of the old courthouse once the new courthouse is completed. And, you know, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think there was some preliminary vote or guidance from capital that was leaning toward demoing the old courthouse, not trying to do anything else with it. So part of this, I think, was just to talk about how we got to that point, what some of the background was. So at the last capital meeting, I basically identified really what I think are the three main reasons that the group at the time concluded that that was the best course of action. You know, we've looked at the building. As you know, we've been working with you guys for many years on your planning, master planning, looking at building evaluations and that. So I'll say the three main things that led to that decision to not move forward with that building, but rather demo it. First one is really, you know, it's an old building. Let's be honest. It's a building that, while it's been maintained over the years, it has a need for, I'll say, significant base building improvements for it to be viable as a long-term building asset for the county. So I'd hate to see you start moving people in there, doing small things, put money into it if you're not willing to make the investment necessary to make it another 50-year asset like you're envisioning your facilities these days. So things like the exterior, there's a number of energy efficiency improvements that would need to happen, windows, roofing, mechanical system upgrades, a lot of different things that are going to be required for that to be a long-term asset. So that's one negative there. The other big thing, second, is it's really not purpose-built for what your future needs are. And I think you've probably, those that have heard me talk to your group before know what I mean when I say purpose-built. We're really trying to look at buildings for your future that are really tailored to what the functionality of the programs are. So the new courthouse is meticulously planned and built to, you know, provide the flexibility needed and plan for the various functions that are going to be in there. The old courthouse, you know, doesn't really align well with what your future needs are. You know, you're looking at probably predominantly office type functional needs. It's not designed as a modern office building with the efficient core shower and bathroom layouts and that to make it a really efficient, usable building. So it's got some challenges with that in terms of, column-based spacing and that kind of stuff. It's very difficult to put technology through that building. I think the courts have found that to be the case as they've tried to implement some technology into the courtrooms themselves. It's been very difficult to implement that technology in the building as it's designed and built right now. And really the last thing is, what we've looked at is trying to align what your needs are with what the building size is. So there's a lot of the major programs and operations that you have are now situated in new buildings with the sheriff's law enforcement facility or public safety facility, the new courthouse, even things like animal control and EMA garage and that are just starting up with construction. As we look at functions that have not had facility upgrades to them, there's a handful of functions remaining in the judiciary. Public defender, for example, who's currently still in a leased space. Probation, who's in MCO right now, but as we look at the long-term plan, state's attorney's needs are going to grow and they'll need to continue to expand in that building. It would be ideal to move probation out of that building into new space over time. There's a couple ancillary judicial functions, smaller, that have needs as well. But if you take all those together, it's not enough square footage to occupy the whole old courthouse, so you'd have space that's unused. And so there you'd be, paying for the upgrades and maintenance and operations and all that on a building that's not fully utilized. If you look at it the other way, the other big component of functions that have not really been addressed for long-term are county government functions that are in this building. So as we look at those functions and kind of what might need to happen long-term, if you factor that in with a consolidation of some of the judiciary, the building's too small. And it's not an easy building to add on to by the nature of the construction, the type of construction, the site layout. So it just is not right-sized for what your needs are long-term. So those are really the three main reasons that, we've kind of worked with a lot of the folks on capital and come to the conclusion that it's not a good building for you long-term. So I'd be happy to answer any questions you have on that.
Yeah, Jason, my recollection is that you also did some cost modeling, and I don't remember the exact numbers, but the cost per square foot to renovate was as high or maybe higher than it would cost to actually build a purpose-built building that we would need than the renovation cost. I mean, or they were very close. Do you recall?
Yeah, about 2 years ago, almost 2 years to the day, we did kind of an initial assessment of that, and this wasn't an exhaustive analysis where we designed things and got formal pricing and all that, but we tried to factor in the base building improvements that would need to happen and some of the other functions and not knowing specifically what functions would move in. We looked at kind of normal build-out costs and then factored them for the complexity of that building, and we came up with an initial estimate of close to $42 million, and that was not even renovating the whole building. You've got a basement in there that's pretty sizable square footage, but is not very functional space. I mean, you wouldn't want to be putting staff and offices in the basement of that building, especially if you've been down in the basement. It was a sizable cost to do that. And there's a lot of little things about that building too. Just in terms of accessibility with the main floor of the building being elevated and that kind of stuff that just makes it a challenging building.
Can I just follow up on that a little bit? Just to follow up on that a little bit. That's all I wanted. I don't have another question. So following up on that $42 million was, like you say, it wasn't an exhaustive analysis.
Right.
But I think that's what the committee really made their final decision when they heard the number. And did you give, at the time, I guess, did you give what you thought it would cost to build new? I want to say the numbers were like the same.
Yeah, it was pretty close.
You recall the?
I do remember.
Yeah.
It was almost, it was, just about even.
Yeah,
It was
okay.
almost as expensive to try to repurpose that as it
Right.
was to build a
So
new
it was
one.
like-
Which is how we came to it that way. We might as well
Yeah.
have something fresh and new that
Yeah,
works.
okay.
Works.
And I remember, Jason, last year, you came to Capitol, and we did all that work, and we did talk about demolition after we listened to everything. Do you remember what that demolition cost was?
I think at the time there was a...
Maybe Ray might. I see Ray coming up behind you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To renovate the building, like you said, was about $42 million.
Right.
And then just a roundabout demolition cost was about $1.5 million. $1.5 million
I knew it was
to take
pretty
it
low.
down.
Yeah.
There were a lot more challenges. I know I don't want to spend too much time in here, but the challenges that we went through and talked about, discussed, that were ahead of us. The building obviously was made pre-internet,
Right.
pre-Wi-Fi.
Right.
The windows alone were just a massive cost, because to upgrade the windows on the building that's that old and they're single pane, the amount of money we were spending on just heating and cooling, I mean, the cost, it was just cost prohibitive in our opinion, and I believe that it was unanimous at the time, because they felt that we could have taken another direction, even in conjunction with the city of Joliet,
Right.
or, retail, first floor,
Right.
a few options, but it was $1.5 million.
And then there was some savings. We even talked about the stone. City of Joliet might be interested in some of that. I think we talked about last year. I mean, it was just hypothetical, but they'll buy anything from us.
Yeah, so I see you. It was, it was quite prohibitive, and that's
Yeah.
my memory as well.
They wanted that stone. I'm through.
Okay. You have a question?
Yeah, was there any look at what the cost might be after demolition if we were to put a green space in there, both for the public and the workers to maybe eat and enjoy some
No.
outside area?
No.
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 Was there any,
No.
was there anything green after it was demolished, or just?
No, the-
cost was looked at?
No, the committee actually looked at the fact that, we felt that was one of the prime areas of downtown Joliet that would sit well within our campus in that district, and that parking had always come up, but the committee thought we could do parking in another location and kind of give us campus feel, whether we, move our offices and operations from here down there where we could all be together, and eliminate some of the rental properties that we're spending, $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 a year on. We'd be able to roll it into a building. So if we were to actually go out and put up a campus there, another building, it would actually save the county some money and not have to go through the $42 million expense. Right, redevelopment was the only thing we talked about, yeah.
Okay. Was anything else, Jason?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't rush to divest of the asset. I mean,
Yeah. No,
certainly
we don't
the
do
property's
that.
a nice
prime.
asset. I mean, that's something that can be, determined down the road. If somebody came along and offered you a ton of money for it, for development, private development or something, that's something the board could consider. But it's a great location, knowing the other built assets you have down there in the new courthouse and that. So, demoing the building and just kind of waiting until the timing is right, I think is probably the best course of action.
Yeah. Thank you. And thanks, Ray.
You're welcome.
You had another question?
So,
Wait, Ray.
the items on here, so we were going to officially do a resolution saying that we were going to do the demolition and formalize it? Is that why it's here?
We wanted to just have some, people had asked what we're going to do about that, so we wanted to just have the discussion. However, I believe we are at a point where we can do the resolution to demo, unless
Okay.
there is some other appetite. I don't believe that anybody can say that there was value to us holding on to that. So we do, at some point, need to say, yes, this is what we're going to do about it, even though we don't know what we'll do after.
So can I ask Mary, maybe this would be more of a question for you. So if I did a resolution to add this demolition to the courthouse project, would that be the better way of doing it, formalizing it?
I'm thinking separately.
Probably go out for bid for the demolition
Separately.
I mean, if you want to put on the county board a formal resolution that the decision has been made to demolish it sometime in the future, you can do that.
So can I make a resolution, make a resolution stating to go out to bid for pricing for demolition Of the courthouse?
Yeah, I'm thinking what you want to do is move that we agreed to demolish the building.
Okay, how about I'll just make a simple resolution for demolition of the old courthouse at the appropriate time.
Seconded. And then, Mary, following that, then we can move into the other pieces of it, is that correct?
When there's an appropriate timeframe, I don't think
Okay.
you want to go out for bids.
No, we're not there. We're not there. We're just moving
And
to
it was the-
demolish.
And it was the desire of the committee at the time that we were hoping to be able to come in under budget, which obviously, you know, we're $9.5 million under budget, and we had some construction contingency. If that continued to go down the path, we were going to utilize that money, so we didn't have to go back to the taxpayers and use.
So we might be able to.
And that's why we didn't put the resolution back earlier.
Yeah.
That's it.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you, Ray. And thank you. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Question?
Did you want to have this done this month, or you want a resolution for next month?
We're probably going to have to, I think time-wise, it's going to have to go to next month. We can do it for, okay, so then yes, put it on. Thank you. Okay. The next one was the discussion on the TIF, and I've learned from the assessor's office, they're preparing a handout for our members, and we'll have a discussion, but they need that to be on next month's agenda. So I'm going to move that one.
You need a motion?
Motion to move.
Motion to table it? That's-
Yeah, and we've got that. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. The next one also, I understand from the executive's office, they're not quite ready. That's on number 4, so need a motion. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay. The next one is the emergency repairs at stormwater along Wilmington Peatone Road. All in favor? Any opposed?
Can I just ask a question about that one? 'Cause I'm not familiar with the area. I mean, is this really old? Did something happen to cause it to?
I think everything's out there is old.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we had a break there, but,
Yeah, I think.
you want to speak to it?
Just not here, but I could speak. I'm Brian Geeske, Just Assistant. It is a pipe that was installed back in 1992. It's not ancient, but we believe that the railroad traffic has caused settlement of the pipe. This goes directly under the CN tracks that buried it.
Well, I read something about a sinkhole, so I just kind of wondered, was there something else going on around there that caused the sinkhole?
The sinkhole.
Pipes are put together, they're done in sections, and the joints had separated, causing a hole to drop down at the top.
Oh,
Something.
okay. Thank you. Now I understand. I need a
Okay.
visual sometimes.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions on that one? Okay. Resolution 1960, authorizing an IGA with the county and IDOT.
Motion. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? One-year contract extension for telecommunications for long-distance service.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Replacement hire for the assessor's office, rather.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. And let's see here. Replacement hire for another, this is the real estate transfer processor for the assessment's office.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Replacement hire for land use.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Replacement hires for Sunny Hill.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. And then we have proclamations. Do you have the sheet? We have a couple of 3, I think.
We have 2 that'll be presented at the podium, I believe. We've got Providence Catholic High 100th anniversary.
Continued.
And then Joliet Township Special Olympics Basketball Championship. Both of those that will be presented at the podium. And then we have 3 just read into the record, recognizing Red Cross Sound the Alarm events in May, recognizing County Government Day, and recognizing Earth Day.
Okay.
That's a recognize.
Somebody's got to pat us on the back. Okay. And then we have thank you. Then we have the appointments from the county executive's office.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. We don't have any other new business. Mary, we didn't have anything with you for an opinion. Okay. Committee reports as they stand. Any questions on those? No? Okay. Public comments? I don't think we have any public here. I have no announcements or reports. We don't have the need for an executive session, do we, Mary?
I'll move
Yep.
to approve the county board agenda as amended.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Next meeting will be May 2nd. Thank you all.